Morning, guys. It's Eric Inielli again. Today, I have a 2017 Kia Sorento. It's getting PO200. It's a injector circuit open code, and it's not pointing to which injector it's saying is open. They're under the intake manifold. It's a 2.0 turbo. All right, guys. The live data doesn't give me much. It's just showing it's still controlling the pulse width, and they're all even. But what I'm going to do is, you can tell it's got a bad vibration to it, but I'm going to disable the first injector on cylinder 1. That's the one that the coil kind of disappeared yesterday. There's no fault code. Start. It's absolutely no difference. Stop. Now we'll kill injector 2. Start. Yeah, the engine did die. That doesn't sound good. As the starter's still going. Sometime after an injector kill test, I noticed that yesterday. The starter would just keep spinning after you killed something. But injector 3, we're going to kill that one. Oh, that one failed. Okay, it can't kill injector 3. Let's see if it could kill injector 4. Yeah. Huh. It's very weird. Injector 1 stays on. Okay, injector 2 killed it again. No. Okay, I think it hasn't sounded too good there, but let's try 3 now. Okay, killed it on number 3. Okay, now we'll see if it'll kill injector 4. Number 4 makes no difference. Injector 1 makes no difference. Injector 4. No difference. And injector 2 or 3 kills it. So 2 bad injectors. Nope. Anyway, tell us, take off that intake and on the mount and look for any wiring damage underneath there. It seems weird. It just kills. If you kill injector 1 or injector 4, you get no difference in RPM. You kill 2 and 3, engine dies immediately. So a little bit more digging in, and I think we're going to find a bad injector under there, maybe 2. Hey guys, this is how bad it's running. It's shaking pretty good. And you see if I totally disconnect the first cylinder, nothing. Unplug coil 4, nothing. Some two cylinders aren't contributing. If I unplug this one, I'm sure it'll stop. Alright, so we got a fuel delivery problem with 1 and 2. We got good control on the coil wires. But nope, we're going to take off the intake and we're going to find where our short is. I'm out fuel injectors anyway. Okay guys, here's where I got it to so far. Now I got to take off this fuel rail. I got to disconnect over there. There's a lot of pressure behind these, and I didn't run it dry. Sometimes you could pull the fuel injection fuse, or the fuel pump fuse or relay, and let it go till it runs out. But with this high pressure pump, I didn't want to take that chance. I'm going to just wrap it with a rag and break it loose. But the main thing I want to do, being 1 and 4 weren't making any difference, I definitely want to ohm these out, because I'm still not convinced it's not in the wiring. So I'm going to ohm these out, hopefully find 2 bad injectors, ohming them out. But if not, we're going to just trace the wires. I'm going to check the powers and grounds that, look anywhere. But the big thing here is, as close as that is to the starter, I mean, there's a live lug down there going straight from the battery. You always want to disconnect the battery before you play with anything fuel. All right, guys. I'll be back, hopefully with some better news. It's all good. Hey guys, when I got to number 4 injector to unplug it, there was nothing. The safety clip wasn't on, and it slid right off. I didn't even have to pinch it. These are just GDI injectors. They'll look a little beat, but right now what I'm doing is I'm ohming them out. That first one's 1.3 ohms, so that's good. At least it got continuity anyways. Now I know what color. I didn't have a schematic, and on the internet there was a lot on Google. There was a lot of discrepancies, to put it mildly. So what I did, now I'm going to know which wires go to which injector, and then there's a connector right here. If for some reason, put it back together, because I know number 1, you couldn't injector kill, it made absolutely no difference. Could be a control issue on it, I don't know. But the car came in with a brand new fuel injector to go in, but the problem was, which one is it? Number 1, whenever I disconnected or cut the coil or the fuel, it made no difference. Number 4, it made no difference. Number 4 is unplugged, so I could explain that, but I was hoping to find an open injector in number 1. Then that would explain 1, but it would have been 2 coincidences at one time. So I'm going to just ohm the rest of these out and go from there, guys. Hey guys, I had a couple more connections this morning to put on this Kia, this 2.0 turbo. Didn't find nothing wrong under the injectors. I didn't have any schematics, anything, but I wrote down all the wire colors where it comes out that big plug by the intake, in case I do have to use a scope on it. It's something affecting 1 and 4, and the only common thing I found so far is every wire alternates color, but 1 and 4 both have a black wire. So I wrote that down on the pinout. That's something to take note of. These GDIs are a little bit different than the typical fuel injection I'm used to, because I read some could go up to like 50 volt to get these things started, and then go down to lower voltage. So I'm not sure. It might be missing something like that. And an open circuit could also mean the transistor in the engine control module. So we're kind of going backwards. Dave just showed up with a fuel injector. I think he thought I could change it like a spark plug. I don't know who told him he needed the fuel injector, but it's a fuel injector open circuit code. So it could be, in the ECM, could be in the wiring. I'm looking my whole way back. Somebody put an engine in it. So, but now at least I know the pin out on that connector. I had no schematics or nothing to go from. But what I wanted to do, if we don't need this injector, because it could be good, it's good electronically, it still could be bad mechanically. So I'm not having them take it back quite yet, but it is exactly 1.3 ohms too. So all the ones on the engine were 1.3. If I would have found a high resistance one, that would have went in, but I didn't, so it's going back in the box for now. Hey guys, I ran it and it's still running. It's there no problems at all, no engine light coming on. It's, but you know me, I'll try to take something to the point, but you don't trust something. Like I just found that loose connector down there on the number 4 injector, but it all takes a lesson like that to come back to learn something from. And this, I want to show you the one thing I did learn from that. I'm not very familiar with the lambda sensors, more used to O2 sensors where we're dealing with a voltage of like 0.1 to 0.9. But before, when it was running the way it was, the actual lambda was 2.0 and the desired lambda is 1.0. That was the same. This was 2.0 here. So just making sense, let's just take those two and show them. Now we didn't really need the fuel tank pressure, but the required lambda at 1, anything above 1 indicates there's too much oxygen in the catalyst. Anything below means that you're running rich. So we were running extremely lean, and the actual lambda was 2.0. Now it's 1.0, and that's what the required lambda is. So maybe it was just an unplugged injector. It's just I never trusted being something that easy, because too many times I've got burnt and said, oh, here's my problem, plugged it in, put something back together, and then before you know it, you're tearing it apart. So while you're there, anything that's hard to get to, you want to double check, like, you know, work your way back. But I'm feeling pretty good that at least changed, because it does make sense. Pumping air with no fuel is going to drive the lambda value up. But all right, I'm going to let it run and probably take it for a ride a little bit, and you know, cycle it a couple times, try to get it to run a couple monitors, and you know, maybe it was just unplugged. I mean, we'll find out. Oh, the one complaint was low power climbing hills, and it seems to like climbing them now. Climbs are really nice. $60 mile an hour at the top of the hill. I wasn't even on it hard, but I could see running on 2 cylinders, this thing had to be. The only thing that's fun climbing a hill with 2 cylinders is a motorcycle. All right, guys, that was a pretty cool no part fix. I mean, we saved one part from the parts can, it's, in the end, that could have been a waste of time without any service data or any kind of information. I mean, nothing on Google that I could trust either for it. And some Kia forums, I mean, not really much. That code always seemed to lead to the variable, the intake runner valve. But, you know, this is an injection circuit problem. The only part of the circuit I couldn't get to was under the intake. So, I mean, if I'd had a better pinout, which I ended up making myself because I could see the wiring colors. Now, if I need to back probe the big 12-way connector, but I mean, in the end, it's just old school mechanics getting down to the injectors, owing them out. Now, there was no reason to put the Napa one in. The factory builds the best self-cleaning injectors. I mean, just run good fuel. And so putting the Napa, a brand new part in there, you're putting a lesser part than what's in the engine. So, you know, why do it? Just put it back together and say, that wasn't the problem. But luckily we found that loose connector. I usually don't trust that unless it's the wires dangling, not running, then missing, then running and missing, you know. It's, but at any rate, the intake had to come off to get that connector. So no harm, no foul. Learned a lesson on the Kias and the Hondas. They're all the same with that lambda sensor. You know, Toyotas, they work a little bit different on it. This is just giving you a reading of 1. It's supposed to be 1, and it was 2. 2 was a dead hole. I mean, it's a lesson learned in hindsight, but those are the ones you remember. I mean, you could read about them all you want, and even watching this, after you see that, the one that's going to stick in your head is going to be the first one. It's like, oh, this isn't like a regular O2 sensor. I mean, they're all different. Now, the Kia and Hyundai one, that's kind of impressioned into my head. So, but I made a crude pin out, and I think I found what's in common between number 1 and number 4. With the injector kill, number 1 and number 4 made no difference. So it was running on 2 cylinders whenever it was in its fit. 2 and 3 killed the engine instantly. But why would a loose connector, I mean, that's an open circuit, but it needs that ground from the even fire number 1. So if you have an injector open, it's going to kill 1 and 4. I mean, that's what it looked like. But the only thing I found in common, I'll make a little bit better drawing in my crude one I have here, but on number 1 and number 4, they share a black wire. 2 and 3 share a blue wire, and every other wire is a different color. Number 1 and number 4 were the ones that made no difference, either killing the coil or shutting off the injector. But whenever I plugged in number 4, number 1 and number 4 start working. Some kind of theory behind that, but that's not how the old injectors work. But learned a lesson. All right, guys, thanks for watching. Adios. All right, guys, first off, I want to say thanks. Between the time of starting this video and finishing editing it, I hit 1,000 subscribers. So thank you guys very much for liking, subscribing, commenting, and mostly for teaching and sticking around, giving me some advice. And you just been great camaraderie. It's like I work up here by myself. There's nobody, nobody to joke with, nobody to talk to. Whenever you find something really cool, you want to show somebody. So I encourage everybody to do this. I mean, I didn't think one single person was gonna, even watch a video, let alone like it or subscribe. I mean, guys, thanks a lot. Thank you so much. But second thing I want to talk about on this, on this car, I was figuring maybe it's going to be another chance to use the scope, but they're not all chances to use the scope. But what I went in there for, I just went old school with the ohms meter. And while I was there, being I didn't have a schematic, I usually use, like, if you're rushing all data, it goes up to so many years, and then after that, I couldn't find the car in there. So you're relying on Google. I really didn't like that. Showed up with an injector, just took it off, because that's going to be the first thing in the service manual. It's going to be unmount the injector. So in this case, I did exactly what you would have done, in the dealership. You would have taken your time and did that. But it pays. So took the intake off. Luckily, I found that. The scope might have been able to tell me more, but with the scanner, and I kept calling it lambda sensor, whatever, lambda sensors, I believe the correct word for it, but not too familiar with them. A couple times on Toyotas, but I looked it up as I went. This one had a weird way of it, the percentage of correction, but that the actual lambda value just being 1 or 2, but then it was 5% correction. So I'm just assuming, like an old regular fuel trim, that 5%, that's 5%, it's nothing, that's good. So learned a lesson with that. But if you have a cylinder not pumping air, and then had to just unplug the coils, and there's 2 cylinders not pumping, and I got 1 injector, but all right, let's see if maybe it's 2 injectors. But I'll show you the only thing I found in common with them 2, but I had a pin out. So now coming out, if I wouldn't have found the problem there, if it wasn't simply just the wire, that was just luck taking the intake off. I kind of had a hunch that this was going to go back towards the computer, maybe a ground issue or something, if it was taking out 2 cylinders at once like that. But, why the connection issue worked like that, that's something that they're sharing the ground somehow. But it's kind of odd if 1 injector. That means if it was open, if the solenoid was actually open in the injector in cylinder number 4, that's going to set the same code and disable cylinder number 1. It's not a very good backup strategy in my opinion, but hey, it is what it is. And sometimes you have to go in to the component, test it, and work your way back. In this case, made my own schematic as I went. I made a little bit better renditioning of it, and I'll show you what I mean. Let me turn the camera around, guys. Okay, guys, this is a drawing I made. On the injectors, I wrote down their wiring color. And number 1 and number 4 both use a black wire. So the injectors on the 12-pin connector, these 3 go to the fuel pressure regulator. This black, I can't remember where that went to. It wasn't the knock sensor. It has its own harness, but this black could possibly be shared with them, but it doesn't make too much sense because cylinder 1 would be black and white, cylinder 2 would be red and blue, 3 is pink and blue, and number 4 is black and red. The only thing between both of them injectors in common is this black wire. And they're firing in, that order to keep the engine even. But Wyatt's cutting both of them out just for an unplugged injector, that was a little bit odd. But this is what I came out with. It was, granted, a little bit cruder drawn at the time. But if I would have needed to check to see if them injectors were going, we know unplugging the coil did absolutely nothing to them 2 cylinders. So I would have had somewhere to back probe. I could have did a current ramp on the injector and a voltage test because they were good electronically. They were 1.3 ohms, or electrically, I mean, whatever way you want to put it, they were good. But that doesn't mean that pinto's going up and down and squirting fuel every time. It could be good, but the pinto won't move. Usually it'll burn up, but sometimes, no. But 2 of them together, that's what was throwing me the whole time and kind of leading me towards the ECU. But at least I came out with this in case it wasn't a simple unplugging. I mean, luckily it was, but, with the amperage, you could see the pinto move, and with the voltage, you could see the pinto move. You could not tell if it's opening or closing. So that would have been important coming out of here because the wire colors change. This is the big 12-pin connector on the intake. The wiring color changes after you plug it in, so it's good to have a view of, which wires you're going to be back probing for these cylinders, and then it would have been a perfect. But either way, intake would have had to came off. That was a little bit roll of the dice, but worked out. All right, guys. Thanks a lot. Adios. See, that's one of the benefits of recording right there, because there's actually 2 more things I wanted to mention. If you back probe or ohm out them injectors, these plugs are jacks are hard to move in the end of the leads, the probes, is what I'm trying to say. Now, whenever you put these on wire, it's a very small pin. You could possibly damage it, and it's hard to keep them staying still, and your readings vary. And if you're going to get into scope usage and any kind of automotive diagnostics, you could buy these AES wave cells. Like, they're very nice kits of short leads. But you don't want to damage them pins when these are that cheap. I mean, you could get a box of them for, $20, $25 anywhere on Amazon, different brands, eBay, and then you, in the spare time, you just get the do-it-yourself banana jacks. Make any kind of adapter you think you're going to need. They come in handy because they go right on there, and then they even make the leads for the voltmeter. You're going to go through a lot of leads. So it's easier if you get good wire like a super worm wire. And stick around, I'll show you guys how to make all these different adapters, different leads as we go in. But you do build up a pile of them. Let me get the camera out of there. Like, keep them in the drawer here. It's organization's always, you have to keep everything in order or you'll never find it. But every time you need to make a set, like these ones are empty. If I need to make a set on a run, a different pen, they already have banana jacks on them. These ones will go right to a multimeter or a scope. And these ones, if I remember, they're big for like bigger, older Ford and GM trucks. Need to check out like an EGR valve or something, or any of them, they have the bigger jacks. These were, I can't remember what car I made them for, but then you have them. And you just build up a pile of them. But if you buy them, guys, it gets expensive. So you're better off getting the kits and learning how to make them. Stick around, I'll show you how to do that. I got a couple videos on making them, but it's, things keep changing and suppliers keep changing. So it's always good to, keep up on it. But something very, very important. It saves you a lot of money because you never realize how much leads are going to cost. And every time you use them, you ohm them out. And it seems like the homemade ones or the better ones, the silicone wire. The BNC I don't really mess with. I like buying them from like Martin Lauren. He makes really good silicone ones, soft silicones. I got a couple of the 3 meters. They're BNC. They give you a little bit more shielding. These are, I make for either the voltmeter or multimeter or the Modus. It still uses banana jacks. So they're pretty common, pretty easy to use on the do-it-yourself sensors. So it's a very good hobby to take up. It's almost like tying flies, only you don't know what the trout's going to hit on. You don't know what kind of connector you're going to need. So as cheap as they are, and make them in your spare time. The second thing was with that lambda sensor. Wasn't too familiar with that. I don't know if I mentioned that, like, the difference between that and an O2 sensor. I was kind of looking for like not just a 1 or a 2. I was looking, there is a percentage of correction. It was at 5. So, I'm figuring like an O or a short-term fuel trim, that's fine. It doesn't have a long-term, it just has a fuel correction. So the software that on the Kia itself is a little bit odd, like the parameters, what they name the PIDs and what everything is. And, it's a little bit odd. I didn't know if that was lean or rich after I seen that was lean above 1 and it was 2. So, pumping the air, that's definitely going to make a lean condition. So the computer was right. It was picking everything up, and we did have an open circuit. But now I know a little bit more about them lambda sensors. That's what's always good. I mean, it's those kind of lessons you remember, guys. All right. Thanks again for watching. Adios.